How do I start my own business?
Being my own brand would be totally legit.
I want to be the next Gary Vee.
My dream is to be on Shark Tank.
I'm just gonna Google it.
I mean, I'm awesome at social media. What could go wrong?
Oh my God.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Learning Curves. My name is Kelly Bassetti, and I am sitting here today with Adam Mangana, and I'm so excited for you to meet my guest today. He is such an amazing person and probably one of the smartest people that I've met in a really long time. Anyway, Adam is the executive director of Optima Classical Academy, and he has done some amazing things. I think that this is going to be one of my favorite shows because I can't wait for him to tell you about what he's done and this new technology that's coming into our educational system. Adam has pioneered some VR technology. He was able to do this during the pandemic. And basically what he did was he has come up with an alternative to Zoom School by using this VR technology. So right now, I'd like to introduce you to Adam Mangana.
Kelly, thank you for that incredible introduction, but I'm going to have to manage some expectations. I don't know about that. I don't know if I'm going to be helping with the learning part or the curves part. We got to manage the intellectual expectations. Thank you.
I've just been so impressed, Adam, by everything that you're doing and what you're bringing to education. I want to first start off our show by having you tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Absolutely. So I am the executive director of Optima Domi, and Optima Domi is an innovative classical curriculum company. And what makes it distinctive, it's the only virtual instruction provider that is classical in the country. And so in order to have an online classical school or an online charter school in the state of Florida, you have to have an accredited and approved virtual instruction provider providing that curriculum. And so we have been incredibly blessed to be able to launch the world's first online school that happens to be classical and happens to be delivered in virtual reality.
That is so exciting. So let me start by asking you, can you define classical education?
Absolutely. I think that's a really important question because so many folks have these kind of working definitions of the term. For us, classical education goes beyond just the great books, the timeless curriculum, and the 7 liberal arts, the trivium and the quadrivium, but it also goes into the methodology to be able to deliver instruction through Socratic discourse, right? And so classical comes from that ancient Latin word, the best, time-tested. Mm-hmm. And so the curriculum is very rich, and it works in 3 stages, the grammar stage, the logic stage, and the rhetoric stage. We're going to be opening Optima Classical Academy 3rd through 8th grade, and so there'll be a huge emphasis on that grammar stage as well as that logic stage. So classical education is also at its core about what is true, good, and beautiful. So teaching our kids the true history of our country and teaching them how to think rather than what to think.
I think right now in today's world, a lot of parents are really searching for a solution for their children, another way to learn, and the classical education, I think, is something that a lot of people will be interested in learning more about for their kids.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the pandemic exposed was it was striking to so many moms and dads how many of their scholars were not reading full novels. They would come home and they would see on a Zoom that their scholars were, reading readers or not reading at all. And for the future, and trying to teach folks to think for themselves, right? We have to be able to have our kids be able to do the basics, right? The blocking and tackling of education, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Those things are still timeless. And I think one of the really interesting things about this conversation, and one of the kind of contrarian things, is most ed tech companies are thinking about how education will change in the next 10 years. What we think we've figured out is being able to focus on what will stay the same. The great books, the fact that teachers matter, right? The fact that teaching virtue and having people become better people will be increasingly important over the next 10 years, regardless of where the technology takes us.
Absolutely. I think that's so important and the solution that a lot of people are looking for right now. So let's get into a little bit and talk about the technology, talk about the VR. How does that work? I mean, compare that to typical online learning, Zoom. Now we have this brand new, exciting technology that students are going to be able to learn from. Can you explain to me a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Now, Kelly, I won't be able to do it justice. We got to get folks in a headset. But as a starting place, if the mission of your educational institution is to educate the hearts rather than just the minds, right? If it is to teach virtue and have our students develop a sense of identity that is being part of something bigger than themselves, you really can't do that in a traditional two-dimensional environment. The online educational structure in the U.S. was built from correspondence courses. So it was kind of teach yourself, get back to us, we'll give you some feedback. And so most of that content that is digital is asynchronous, meaning you're kind of working at your own pace and you're getting support when you need it, when necessary. What we discovered in the pandemic is, particularly for younger students who aren't independent yet, that's a really challenging way to do school. Like, they had to become their own paraprofessional or executive assistant to be able to print PDFs out, and parents were pulling their hair out because
that's hard to do for a child, is to get themselves organized to be able to do that. Plus, a lot of young children have enough problems focusing and paying attention, and yet now they're having to do all these things that they haven't had to ever do before.
And that's where the power of virtual reality comes in. So what we know to be true that other online schools would disagree with us on is that when you have Zoom school, you essentially have 25 different classrooms, all represented by the checkerboard of faces. When you put a virtual reality headset on, we're back to that singular classroom at which the teacher is the center. And so you can develop the type of relationships that are going to be meaningful for the learning process. And not just from the teacher, but also from their peers. My two kids who are in second and third grade are in a great online school. But the problem with online school right now, even at the best versions, is it is profoundly lonely. They don't know anyone else in their class, right? And for us, in that immersive environment where you have that sense of presence and that common courtesy of connection, the scholars know who their peers are in that classroom the very first day. And that's a big deal when you're trying to learn together, right? So learning is inherently social, and Socrates recognized this. And so even though Socrates was skeptical of books as a technology, he understood the importance of great oration and great memorization. And he was skeptical of books because he thought we would lose that. There will be people skeptical of virtual reality, right? But Plato wrote, and we know about Socrates. In my opinion, we are already at the place where we can see that the internet is moving into 3 dimensions.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And it's going to impact the entertainment life, the social life of our students. The purpose of a classical version of this is so that we can impact the moral life and the moral development of our students, and that they can, through wrestling with the greatest minds in Western civilization, become part of this American family and this American heritage.
I love it.
Thank you.
Yes, and I think it's just so important to get back to that. Being inside the virtual space, I had the opportunity to do this a couple of weeks ago. Adam bought the VR sets into our agency, and I have Kelsey over here that's actually filming this today. Kelsey and I, we've got to go inside, and I have to tell you that ever since I've been, had that demo, all I can do is talk about it to everybody that I see and that I know, and let them know that it's one of the coolest things that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
When you first think about it, you're like, okay, what is that really going to look like? But then you go in there and it feels real. Like you are inside an auditorium, almost like I felt like I was back in college in an auditorium, and you could have other people that are sitting right there next to you. Kelsey was sitting right there next to us, and we had the professor that was standing in front of us, and he was writing on the board. And the visuals that you're able to do, he brought the solar system right into the classroom. Like I could reach out and touch the sun, this big, huge sun, and the planets are all going around. And just for that visual learning that you get. At CEA Marketing, we take your business, your passion, and your why, and we sell it. If you're unsure where to start marketing your company, CEA Marketing is here to help. Our team at CEA has tons of experience and top-notch training, which helps you take all the stress and confusion out of marketing your own business. After years of working with large companies like Pulte Homes, the Outback Bowl, and Metro Places, we guarantee the successful implementation of a marketing strategy. Having that whole experience of being able to have conversations about it, I think it also will help you retain. Because I can't tell you how many books that I've read that I could not even tell you. Like, don't even remember them. But if I had them read to me in the way that they do that in your school, I could probably to this day still remember those great books and be able to tell you everything about them without like zoning off into another world.
Well, the cool thing about the
happens a lot with
the cool thing about the other world is the setting, right, is the third teacher. So if you're reading The Whipping Boy and you're in the castle, you can now relate to Jimmy and Prince Horace in a different way.
Because you remember being in the castle and the surroundings everything that's in there. So you have that vision that people tend to remember visions.
That's right.
Will be locked in your memory.
And more people can contribute, right? More people can contribute to the ideas in the book. And we can really get to the point, which is a story about empathy. And Lord knows we need more empathy in this world, right? So we get back to this idea of teaching virtue, right? Using a great book like The Whipping Boy to teach empathy and ultimately develop virtue in our scholars.
I think it's just amazing.
Well, we're very excited about it. And I think part of my mission is to demystify virtual reality, but virtual reality is the tool. The magic is the classical approach. It's the time-tested approach. Virtual reality is a new variable for many folks. And there are a lot of people out there that are concerned about the metaverse. And my vision for that is that, at least in a school context, that experience in the metaverse is a closed one that is safe and secure. It is not this kind of wide open Wild West that we see captured in our current internet. I think there are a couple of great books out there, but one is Life After Google, and we're seeing a convergence of technologies now. So you have AR and VR, but you also have blockchain and AI, and I think the convergence of this is going to allow people to have a lot more customizable and protected online experiences with folks of like minds who want to connect in communities that are going to bring meaning to their family.
Oh, yeah, I can see that for sure. Absolutely. And one of the other great advantages of this type of learning is, I know during COVID and actually still, I think there's still a lot of kids that are being homeschooled. There were quite a few parents that one of the parents had to quit their job just to stay home to teach their child, because they had to be there with them, because like you mentioned, like a third grader doesn't know how to organize themselves. Yeah. So it's the parent having to stay there with them, making sure they're getting their homework done, making sure they have the understanding of what the assignment is, and that takes a lot of time. So they can't work, they can't do other things. They need to have one person there that's doing that all the time. This new school, like you go in there and they're going to learn everything that they need to learn and remember everything they need to. And so it's going to give a lot more time back to the parent as well. So maybe the mom or the dad can go back to work and, go back to doing what they were doing before while their child is doing this new virtual reality school.
Yeah. So
Gives time back to the family.
That's a tremendous point. There are three real value propositions here, and we've talked about two, right? One is the classical, and we've defined that. Second is the virtuality delivery, and we've talked a lot about that. The third piece that you're hitting on now is it's the user interface and user design, right? Philosophically, we believe in teaching virtue, and one of those virtues is self-government. It's the ability to govern yourself. And so how do you develop that? Well, we're very intentional. We know that developmentally, third grade is a great place to start for that type of independence. So our school is intentionally third through eighth grade to start. And we have built not only this platform within the virtual reality headset, that this learning platform that students can experience, but we also have an LMS, a learning management system, that is two-dimensional, that reinforces what happens in the headset when the headset comes off. And so now students can submit assignments through that learning management system, and parents don't have to, provide clerical support for the assignments that the child is submitting. So they can submit those things on their own. And that onboarding process, the first 2 weeks of school, is just teaching the students how to do that. So they take 2 weeks and they learn how to submit, and after 2 weeks they're pretty much ready to go, and they can access the entire experience for the remainder of the school year.
Yeah.
And that's not unlike what we see if you were with an actual teacher in a brick and mortar school. The first 2 weeks at a school are going to be procedural, and the academic material will be used to highlight those procedures. But the old adage, you don't smile until November. The teachers who are starting that journey with students are always creating the boundaries so that children feel safe in that environment, and they know exactly what they do and when they do it, right? And that's the same thing that we've recreated in the virtual space.
Yeah. And I love the virtual iPads
Yes,
that
yes,
you have.
yes.
Because you can have all your assignments, you can click on it, and
That's right.
it pops right up.
So students have a tablet. They can also take quizzes and assessments right in the headset. And so, one of the big challenges of the the pandemic era has been like academic integrity, like kids discovering that they can cheat online because they can freeze their Zoom screen and go look something up. You just can't do that in a VR headset. We can really be attuned to all of their body language, and we can populate those quizzes and assessments right there on the tablet that you described. That's a virtual tablet, but we can bring in academic material from any online suite of academic assets that we've built.
Yeah, I love that.
So that's a really cool thing. The other thing is, the one real big difference technologically is if for those of our listeners who've been on Zoom, the audio, if you get past about 8 people, gets really cumbersome. Like if you have a meeting of more than 8 people, you start talking over folks.
Yes.
What's great about our platform is that, we have spatial audio that replicates what happens in real life. So if you're doing an activity as a teacher, like a think, pair, share, go discuss in small groups, come back, and we're going to, discuss as a larger group. When they're moving in the VR space, the audio reflects the distance that they are, just like in real life. So if you're further away, you sound softer. If you're closer, you sound louder. And so that is a really great innovation for online school, because we can do now collaborative and group work, and it doesn't feel chaotic.
Yeah.
It feels orderly.
I love it. Yeah, that's one of the most frustrating things, is being part of a Zoom meeting and wanting to say something, but you can't ever get a word in edgewise.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing that we've discovered with this that I did not anticipate, so this has been a surprise, is how many really world-class teachers want to be able to remove all of the operational stress that are in our current brick and mortar schools and start teaching online, where they could just focus on the learning, right? So many schools right now have been burdened with what are the COVID policies, what are the procedures, what are the active shooter policies, right? And nobody really wants to deal with
No,
all
they
of
just
that.
want to go in and teach.
They just want to teach. And so we've been like pleasantly surprised with just the absolute most talented teachers knocking on our door, many of which have national board certifications. And so, our teachers are all certified. When you're nationally board certified, that means you can teach really in any state, right? Your certification is transferable. So one of the things that I
You could
think
have somebody in California teaching a child in Florida.
So that's exactly right. The human capital challenge right now in Denver, last week, 3 public schools closed down because they didn't have enough teachers. And they all had to go virtual, not because of COVID, because they didn't have enough teachers. And so to have an environment that teachers are running to, and they're saying, I want to be able to have the same relationships I had in brick and mortar, but I don't want to have to deal with the slings and arrows of brick and mortar.
Yeah. Plus, it gives a teacher that time back too, because if they're only in the classroom, 4 hours a day compared to
That's right.
normal time,
That's right. Then they actually have time to give intentional feedback. They can actually
one-on-one
grade.
student interaction, which is very much needed.
That's exactly right, and
Yes.
that's how those relationships are built. It's what happens in that after school time. And if your listeners are thinking back to the most powerful moments in their schooling, it was that connection. It was that human connection.
The connection with your teacher, like everybody remembers who their favorite teacher was.
That's right.
And a lot of times it was the one that took the time to spend time with you.
That's right.
I know that, but growing up for me, as I mentioned before, with my learning disability, I didn't even realize I had one. All I knew is that I was being pulled out of the middle of school in the middle of the day, was put in a special class. They called us the slow learner class. And about 4 or 5 of us every day had to go to this class, and basically we did puzzles all day, but you didn't know why you were there. Until I was, later on, as my 6th grade teacher, sat down and said to my parents, Kelly has a hard time reading, and she can barely do any math problems. And she was the one that actually was the one, 6th grade took for a teacher to actually sit down and spend time with me. After she was able to do that, that one teacher impacted my life for the rest of my life. Because I don't even know if I would have honestly got through school without her.
So what's so exciting about
Yeah.
that story from my perspective is, that relationship up until now could not happen online. No. It would not be possible. And so imagine if that opportunity to build that transformative relationship was not hindered by geography, right? If you happen to live in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, there may not be that 6th grade teacher down the street.
No.
But there's a much higher likelihood that teacher could live in Naples, Florida. And this connection, this networked social virtual reality experience could facilitate those relationships, those transformative relationships for so many more kids.
Oh, and make a huge impact for so many kids. Because there's a lot of kids that, every child is different.
That's right.
Every child learns differently. And by having a teacher that they can have that one-on-one with them, I think we're going to build, children that are going to come out, again, being more confident and ready to, take on the world and do the next thing, which I think a lot of them just kind of get lost.
That's right.
In the system.
And for your listeners curious about classical education, it's a philosophy that believes that the teacher matters, right? What has happened over time, over the last 100 years, we've treated teachers like bank tellers or like some type of industry that's indispensable, or that's dispensable as opposed to indispensable, where, here's a script, follow the script, make sure you're managing the behaviors in the classroom. Right. And so if you were to go observe a typical public school interview for a teacher, the questions are around behavior management or procedures and things like that. If you look at a typical classical school interview, it's around, tell me about a time in history that you absolutely are passionate about. It's around domain expertise and content expertise. And that's an important distinction because that content expertise is the platform by which you can engage students and you can actually create that relationship. It's very difficult if all that you're there to do is have that student conform.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or make sure that they're taking the certain amount of, all those tests that they have to take.
Right.
What does that really mean? For some kids, the testing is just, I don't know. I wouldn't want to be. I mean, I had a hard enough time when I was, but when I was going to school, I can only imagine what it's like for kids today, going through school.
But those shouldn't be barriers to wrestling with great ideas. Mm-hmm. And the more that we can teach for genius instead of teaching for excellence, that's a big distinction, right? Like, I
love that.
The more that we can teach for genius, the better off we are. And this is a really exciting opportunity for Optima Domi and Optima Classical Academy. When you're talking about a classical curriculum, you're talking about a curriculum that is not about maximizing utility. It's not about teaching to a test, right? It's not about how many kids can we get to fit in this many boxes. It's really about teaching kids to think for themselves. Mm-hmm. And so it's about teaching for potential. And human potential is, we haven't even scratched the surface of what we can be.
No.
So that's what's exciting about this new opportunity, and to be able to create this learning environment that families can take with them on the go. Like, can you imagine you're learning about ancient Roman history and you actually get a chance to go to Rome?
Yeah. You can actually take that 3-week vacation.
That's right. And so students could physically be in Rome, or they could virtually be in Rome.
Right.
Teachers could physically be there or virtually be there, and they could still have that common courtesy of connection, that consistent curriculum, and that great content expert that's there regardless of what geography they're in, regardless of what time zone they're in.
And that's a great way to learn all about the world, just by being able to, you can what do you call it, teleporting?
Yes.
You can teleport yourself into all these different scenes around the world and all these different beautiful places. And it's like you're really there.
St. Augustine said, the world is a book. If you stay in one place, you've only read one chapter. And so how can you have a world-class education if you haven't experienced the world?
And that's a great way to experience the world.
It
really,
is.
I've been there. He took me all around the world in an hour demo.
And so,
and even on a few other planets.
and that's really what's exciting. Like, kids can begin to see what is possible. Mm-hmm. And I think what I want to make sure families understand is that this is going to be a very time-tested way of doing school, but it's also going to be a new way of experiencing learning environments. So even though the curriculum is time-tested and solid, the way in which we experience the large and small, for example, you talked about the difference between reading about the sun and seeing the sun on a scale with the inner solar system. Right? That speeds up your understanding of the relationships of the planets.
Oh, it does.
So you think about, reading about a lung or entering a lung.
Right.
And being able to compare COPD to asthma, mm-hmm. right? And what do you notice about that? What do you wonder about? Those things that are abstract become concrete for students, which is a really powerful way, particularly for upper elementary and middle school students, to be able to grasp some of these concepts.
Yeah, I think it would, you would go through the whole educational, a lot faster through this type of system, because visual learning, you're going to pick up on so much more and move a lot faster through it.
Yeah. One of the things we say in classical education is a commitment to the good, true, and beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. And when we're looking at the true, good, and beautiful, we want kids to not be in headsets for 8 hours a day. We're going to be in headsets for our live teaching component, which is about 3.5 hours. But so much of the curriculum is about what happens when the headset comes off as well. So being outside, being with friends, what are the things that are going to be really important to your family? For those families who want to keep their children close, not because they want to, necessarily control outcomes or be part of some huddled remnant, but because they've realized in this great resignation that both their children and them have spent so much time on a screen or away from each other. And this opportunity, ironically, allows you to be back together as a family.
Yes.
And that's really what I think the power of this is.
Yeah.
I think it's putting the family back at the center of child development and partnering with the family to create a more virtuous citizen.
I love it. Isn't it so fun to see your vision come to life? I mean, you have to be so excited about this.
My close friends have known that I've been talking about this for about 7 years, and so it's one of those things where I don't know that without the pandemic we would be doing this so soon. I think the pandemic sped up the need, and it opened up so many parents' eyes to what the content actually is that their children are learning. There are a lot of folks out there who have an idea of what virtual reality is. But this is real immersive education. This is not just a fly by the seat of your pants type of delivery model. And so parents have to see it to believe it. We've had a number of parents who have looked at it like a video of it and been like, well, that seems interesting. But as soon as they experience the scale and the sense of presence and the actual human interaction within the space, it completely changes their perspective.
Oh, it does. It changed my perspective. I was in there and I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
Like I said, I have not been able to stop talking about it. It was the coolest thing, and I wish I could go back to school so I could be there as well. I loved it. But the title of my podcast is Learning Curves, and this is like a new way of learning. And it's such a schools right now are such a hot topic. I know, it's all over the news and different things that are happening, and a lot of parents are just looking for different choices. And this is another thing that I absolutely think that if you are looking for another alternative for your son or your daughter, I would absolutely take a look at this, especially if your kids are already being homeschooled. It's just it's an alternative, and I just think that they're going to grow and learn so much from this. I personally know that if I was part of this when I was growing up, I can only imagine what that would have done for me and my confidence as a child. So I absolutely love it. This is going to really go places.
Well, we're very excited.
Very first in the nation, right? To do something like this.
It is. And one question that I've gotten before is like, why do you think folks haven't done this before? And
Yes.
I've been in this space for the last 7 years, and virtual reality was just out of reach from a pricing perspective. One of the really cool things about this is not only is the school tuition free, but the scholars get their own VR headset. And the cost of the hardware has gone down where we can provide that hardware for free based on the per pupil expenditure in the state of Florida. So that allows access in ways that we've never been able to have that before. We used to have to tether a headset to a computer to be able to run it. And now we can have it untethered, completely mobile, and accessible financially. And so the timing has been really incredible for this to be an alternative to online school delivery.
Oh, and it's perfect timing. You're going to hear a lot about this. I think it's going to be something that's going to be very newsworthy, and so many people are going to be interested in learning more. It's just incredible. Thank you so much for coming on my show and letting my audience learn about this. I have a lot of people that follow me in Florida, so make sure you go on the website and check it out. I'll make sure that we drop links into the show notes where you can go directly to their website and to learn more. And by all means, if you are interested in this, sign up for a demo. You've got to get in there. You've got to see what it's all about. It is one of the super incredible, and you will be ready to sign your child up for it. I guarantee it.
Kelly, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Second Soul Studios is a full-service production studio with capabilities for photo, video, podcasting, editing, co-working, and more. Our photo video studio has a number of different backdrop choices and props to choose from. We also have a gourmet kitchen set, Or if you're an upstart podcaster, you'll love our 4-person podcast studio. So what are you waiting for? Visit secondsoulstudios.com to book a tour today.